More than 80 people a day die every day, and 33,000 people die a year in the United States from suicide. Tomorrow is National Survivors of Suicide Day, and conferences will take place throughout the U.S. The conferences are for the family and friends of people who have died from suicide. The conference will take place at the Augusta Health Campus in Fishersville. And joining us now to discuss the issue is Dr. Cynthia Long, a grief support specialist with Shenandoah Valley Grief Services, which is a program of Lutheran Family Services of Virginia. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Bob.
Now, how serious of an issue would you say is suicide?
It's a very serious issue, Bob. It's currently the 11th leading cause of death in this country.
And I understand it impacts certain age groups more than others.
Yes, actually for the age group of young people ages 15 to 24 years old, it's actually the third leading cause of death, just after accidents and homicide.
So what is the trend that we're seeing? Is there a trend in the U.S. suicide rate?
No, the rate is pretty much staying the same most years.
All right. How about the purpose of tomorrow's conference being held at Augusta Health?
Yes, the purpose is to gather together family members and friends of people who have lost loved ones to suicide and provide an opportunity for support and fellowship and hope.
All right. What can ordinary, or actually, what do the survivor families feel? What's common that you've experienced as a counselor for that?
They feel a lot of sadness, but they feel an extreme amount of loneliness because the stigma of suicide is so great. They're afraid and unable to talk to others about it, so they feel very alone.
All right. So tomorrow's conference would be obviously a chance to help intervene in that process and get at least the families, the survivors, the friends talking about their experience, their feelings, and I guess coping with that.
Yes, it's a wonderful way to gather people that perhaps have never talked about it out loud and for them to hear other stories and to feel validated in their sense of loss.
What can ordinary people do for the survivors of suicide, for the families?
I think ordinary people can allow their friends and neighbors to talk. Because of the stigma of suicide, people often don't feel like their neighbors want to listen and they feel very judged. And so the best advice would be to let your neighbors and friends talk about their loved one, remember the loved one's name, and to let them still have honor of that person.
Tell us about tomorrow's conference, the format.
Yes, it'll be a 2-hour conference. The first 90 minutes will actually be a teleconference that's piped in nationally. We will hear families of folks who have died by suicide talk. We'll also hear professionals in the mental health field. And then the last 30 minutes of the conference will be an opportunity for local people here in Virginia to talk to one another and to share stories and to learn coping techniques.
Dr. Long, what are the risk factors for suicide?
There are a number of risk factors. One is having a personal history of suicide attempts. Another would be that you've witnessed another person's suicide or perhaps another violent act that you've witnessed. One would be you have a mental health illness. Another would be you battle depression. You might abuse alcohol or drugs. Other risk factors would be you're isolated and that you feel very alone and you have a great emotional pain.
Are there certain times of a year it happens?
Yes, there's a myth. The myth, Bob, is that it happens a lot during holiday season and during the winter. That's actually untrue. We find more completed suicides take place actually in the spring. What happens is people get through the winter. They get through the dark period, and then the spring comes, and they're still feeling very depressed. They still have the psych ache, and that is when they attempt the suicide. All
right. And as far as people who are in this situation at suicide risk, I guess if people know of people in that situation, encourage them to get help, get counseling. There's ways out of the problem, right?
Yes, certainly they should go to the nearest emergency room or call a 1-800 helpline, but certainly they need to seek help immediately.
All right, Dr. Cynthia Long, a grief support specialist. I want to thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Bob.
Now, for more information on tomorrow's conference for survivors of suicide loss at the Augusta Health Campus, just go to our website, WHSV.com, and click on the hot